Hello. This is episode with 6 of the Alternative Review, the internet podcast with perhaps the world's most unrepresentative ratings. It's the place where we speak the truth in the booth.
Oh
no.
The place where we debate rather than hate. And the place where we say nerp to derp.
What?
We got Jake, we got Adam, and we got me.
Did you practice this?
Nah.
Alright.
I'm spitting fat bars, man.
Alright. Freestyle.
No. Yeah. So.
Hey, wake up.
Just apologies for that one. Like.
Consider me woke, TeamSpeak. Right. So I'm the one with the topics for this week. You guys have been seeing my topics because I've been sort of just putting a bunch of stuff in. There's quite a lot of interesting stuff I've read this week, to be honest. The first one was probably I think it was the first topic I put on our little chat that we got. So here's a headline that I read. Eugenics, Patricia Heaton blasts CBS for report on Iceland eliminating Down syndrome via abortion. I've read a little bit more on this today. So basically, for anyone that's not seen this, you guys have obviously seen it. CBS have basically been talking about how great Iceland is because there's basically next to no children born with Down syndrome now in Iceland. There's very, very few Down syndrome babies born in Iceland, and the reason is that they've introduced screening tests in Iceland that around like 82% of women are now taken in Iceland, and they're using these tests to discern whether or not children are going to have basically chromosome abnormalities, the vast majority of which are Down syndrome, and all of the women that the tests are basically positive for, they're terminating their pregnancy, which is a euphemism for killing their babies.
Yeah.
And people, the reason that people have been going mental about it is because the way the reporting on this is worded sounds like Iceland is actually curing the world of Down syndrome. And like I think one of the points that I made was like I could say, oh yeah, like Wisbeach is now sort of I've cured Wisbeach of dyslexic people because every dyslexic person I'm finding I'm killing them. And I found an article that I screenshotted what was said today. I was reading a bit more about it because it just it was a bit mind-boggling, right? So this woman, Helga Sol Olafsdottir, right? She I can't remember what the actual name of her position is, but it's in the sort of medical field in Iceland. She part of her job is that she counsels women that are considering ending their pregnancy over fetal abnormalities. Right. So this is something that she said. Some of them were low risk in our screening tests, so we didn't find them in our screening, right? Referring to Down syndrome people. She's talking about the Down syndrome people that are born still in Iceland. So they got through their screening without flagging up their system. Okay. She tells mothers, this is your life. You have the right to choose how your life will look like. She told a reporter, we don't look at abortion as murder. We look at it as a thing that we ended. We ended a possible life that may have had a huge complication, preventing suffering for the child and for the family. And I think that it's more right than seeing it as murder. That's so black and white. Life is not black and white; it's grey.
Oh my gosh, that's the definition of preferring the like not searching for the truth, but searching for what you prefer.
Yeah, it's believing something because of the purpose that it serves for you.
Yeah.
And what amazes me is that if I got a job as a counsellor, as a Christian, I don't feel like I could ethically do that for the reason that if I got a job as a counsellor, um, I would lose my job pretty quickly for basically, well, the way it would be, what it would be referred to as, when they sack me, is that I'm sort of putting my views on people, like I'm sort of informing my advice that I give to people with my faith.
Yeah.
So it's like my sort of bias sneaks in almost. But this woman's bias is everything that she's doing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can't look at what this woman is saying and think, oh yeah, that's someone that's looking at both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And there's no scientific basis behind what she's saying. We don't look at abortion as murder. We look at it as a thing that we ended. Where's the scientific basis on that? What that is,
I mean, a thing
is that you're looking at it in the most emotionally and morally comfortable way, by choice.
A thing that we ended. You could just say that about any murder, though.
Yeah, yeah. Well, exactly. And there's points that I'm going to get onto as well with that.
So just to be clear, with the whole like killing off Down syndrome kids in, what was it? Was it Poland? No, Iceland.
Iceland.
So is it that they're not actually removing Down syndrome because the number of babies that are conceived with Down syndrome isn't actually changing? They're just making it so that the ones that do,
well,
don't
it's
get born.
that it's how do you I guess conceived as in getting pregnant.
Yeah.
So there's no change in the amount of pregnancies in which the fetus potentially has Down syndrome, because obviously they never actually find out. It's just that when they identify that there's a high probability they end the pregnancy. And so they're now saying, well, look at Iceland, very few Down syndrome children are being being born. And like this article, I think this was the Independent that I took it from, and it amazed me that there was nothing negative implied about the article.
It's the Independent, of course it was.
It was like they were holding Iceland up as being like advanced in some ways, in terms of their society, like sociologically advanced, because they've done this. Like, and the original article that I read was sort of a lot more. Well, it gave the other side of the fence in terms of talking about a lot of the negative press that this has got. I mean, because when CBS said this, so this eugenics person, I don't know what eugenics is. I guess it's like is it like a genetics type thing?
Eugenics
is like, it's exactly this. It's like weeding out the population to try and make the human race as a whole better in some way.
Right, so like bottleneck breeding for good sort of thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's like I'm pretty sure it's like through controlled breeding, isn't it?
Induced natural selection.
Yeah.
Artificial selection, I guess you would
Yeah,
call it.
and like so this what's her name? What's her face? Patricia Heaton basically came up and was like, yeah, you're not eliminating Down syndrome people. You're just killing people with Down syndrome. Like,
yeah.
You're not eliminating it from the population. And then there's been tweets going around with people saying, like tweeting CBS saying, like, here's one: my nephew was misdiagnosed as Down syndrome and so heavily deformed that he would not be functional. He celebrated his 18th birthday and is perfectly healthy.
Oh my gosh.
My mother was told to abort me because of a defect incompatible with life. I'm 31 and a mother of 3.
Gosh.
And then, so this is the tweet that CBS actually put with their article. Iceland is on pace to virtually eliminate Down syndrome through abortion.
So
right?
dumb.
And then someone's tweeted them, this tweet is written like it's normal routine. What is wrong with people? Like, it's ridiculous. And so when I read the other article that the Independent put, where they just casually put like, "Oh yeah, some Down syndrome people slip through our screening," right?
Oh wow.
It makes me think. So you think that they really shouldn't be alive? Like, if you had done your job properly, as far as you're concerned, if you had done your job properly, that person would not be alive,
Mm.
basically. And then I'm thinking, well, actually, they've still got Down syndrome.
What do you mean?
Like, they're still there. They've still got Down syndrome. I thought you wanted to eradicate Down syndrome people from society by killing them.
Yeah, it's not
The
actually
only
fixing
the
anything.
only
but-
difference is that they've been born at this point. So why aren't you killing them now? Like, ethically, I don't see any distinction. Like,
No.
if you're going to accept that it's okay, there's no distinction just because they've been born. And you can't, on a scientific basis, classify someone as only being a human once they've been born. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
been no change in the in their actual body, has there?
Yeah. I mean, that's why. Yeah, that's why the whole thing takes a step back. Like when you bring up that point, they just have to retreat and say, well, after this point, then you're not allowed. And you say, well,
Yeah.
they still have.
But then you're like, on
blood.
what basis? They're either human or they're not.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's because societally we're now told to accept the ethical basis behind this, that we now have scientists that on a logical level, quite rightly so, are saying, well, there's no difference really between that and a baby, you know. A baby's not really any different from a fetus in terms of its use or its function as a human being. So why can't we do post-birth abortions? And because they've accepted the ethical basis of abortion in the first place, and there's no change in the ethical basis, they can logically make that step, and there's no contradiction. There's no sort of dissonance in making that step in their minds.
What
Well,
do you think, Adam? You're being very silent.
I'm just mulling over the situation. I mean, there's no other word for it, is it? It's just disgusting.
It's genocide.
Absolutely, it's horrific. It's something that you would totally expect of a fascist regime. There's no other way of looking at it.
Wow, yeah, I didn't even.
It's,
think
And
it's
you've
Carry
got
on,
people
sorry.
saying, "Oh, it's 2017. Look at how great the world is in 2017."
it's terrible.
Mm.
I mean, they use the term fetus to try and detach any humanity from a baby, but the word fetus literally comes from a Latin word which means offspring. It literally
Right.
means child. So, I mean, it's beyond stupid, isn't it? I mean, I don't understand how. I don't understand how somebody could. I mean, maybe it's just what sin does to your head, I guess. But I don't understand how somebody can look at abortion and how a baby's being killed in the millions for purely for convenience and also for like this Iceland thing,
Mm.
and then they can look at that and then hold absolutely no moral problem.
Well, they say she was saying like about how you're in control of your own life.
Who's it? Yeah, but she's also in control of the baby's life. because the
Exactly.
it's so stupid.
I don't know how you can so easily just brush over the fact that there's two lives involved in that.
It just seems there is no good argument, is there, for abortion? None. There isn't a single argument that is good. They're all reliant on things like, you guys know basically all the same arguments for abortion, the same arguments for slavery. It's my land. I can do what I want with it.
Yeah,
It's my
right.
property. So what if I want to?
It's not a real human being.
Yeah, really, really stupid stuff. I just find it disgusting. It's one of those things where you just look at the world and you're like, I wish I could make that difference somehow. No.
It makes me a little bit ashamed to be a human being, to be honest.
I was
I
wondering
don't-
what.
Sorry, go
Carry
on.
on, sorry. No, carry on.
I was just gonna say I don't understand where the whole idea came from for abortion. Like, surely
Well-
the rudimentary abortion would have just
Mm.
been killing it as soon as it was born, right? Then someone had the bright idea, why don't we just go in there and kill it before?
It's the same
That's
old
weird.
thing. It's because it's more emotionally comfortable.
Right, yeah.
It's like if you've got a pig running around and you name it, you can't eat it after you've named it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's exactly the same thing going on in people's heads.
I reckon there's some farmers that might disagree with you. looking
yeah,
at
they
Daisy
would,
like,
but
"Oh, yes,
but you
weird."
can understand what I'm saying though. It's
Yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
absolutely disgusting, and I just it just struck me even more just when I was reading Independent's take on it that was totally positive,
Mm.
and they were like,
yeah.
oh yeah, some still slip through the net sort of thing,
Oh,
but
terrible.
we'll get those pesky fetuses like.
Yeah, I'd love to hear one of these people explain to me. If I said, "Oh, if some slip through, why don't we just kill them? Why don't we just go out now and kill them? What's the difference? What seriously? What is the difference between killing them now and killing them in the room? Like, somebody explain to me the difference. Absolutely ridiculous.
Makes no difference whatsoever. The ethical basis is exactly the same.
Oh gosh,
And
that's
even,
really
even when
disheartening. Isn't it?
they use broad statements like you've got control over what your life's going to look like. Really? Do you? Like, what if I don't want my life to look like, living people around me, or like, what if I don't want my life to look like black people living in the same country as me? You don't have
You can use that for absolutely anything.
Yeah,
you
I know.
do, really, can't you?
It's such a wishy-washy, liberal, empty statement, and it's not even true.
Gosh,
At its core, it's not even true. You don't have ultimate control over what your life looks like, and
no.
that principle is ruining so many aspects of our society. If you're a boy and you want to be a girl, you don't have control over that.
Yeah.
And when you get surgery to make everyone like think you look like a girl, and everyone starts calling you a girl, and then you die, and then you decay, your bones are going to be the bones of a man because you're a man. It's exactly the same thing.
But if you take, and I say a woman gets pregnant, she finds out her baby's got Down syndrome, but she wants to keep it, right? And then you have another woman, and she gets pregnant, and she finds out her baby has Down syndrome, and she wants to get rid of the baby.
Mm.
How can look at those two scenarios? How is one morally acceptable and the other one? Like, I don't understand either. The woman who decides to keep the baby, it's wrong. Because she's decided to keep a baby that's going to live with this genetic disease that should be eradicated, or the woman who chooses to get rid of the baby is wrong.
Yeah,
because
they
it
can't
was
both
made
be
Yeah.
right on an ethical grounds, unless you say, oh well, they've both got control over what their life looks like, regardless of what people want. Right is right and wrong is wrong.
It's just horrific, though, isn't it? So imagine that in the eyes of some people, one of those babies had moral value purely because the mother decided to keep it and the other one didn't. That's absolutely horrific.
And the point I was talking to my wife's to my wife's dad about this as well, and he made a really interesting point that
Father-in-law.
Yeah, indeed. He made a really interesting point. If a woman conceives a Down syndrome child, right, and on that basis she decides to abort the child, and then she conceives a child and they say, oh yeah, the child's going to be normal and everything, and then she has a kid and normal kid, does she really love that kid as much? Because suddenly you're putting a condition on the love for your child. Or even going even further, right? The screening tests, right? That they let one or two of them through. So she has a Down syndrome kid. She aborts it. The next one they don't pick it up, and she has a Down syndrome kid by accident. Does she love that kid?
Oh man.
Because she would have killed. She would have killed it.
She would have killed it. Well, let's say she aborted her Down syndrome baby, and then she hears on the news, man kills child with Down syndrome because he had Down syndrome, and she goes, "Oh, that's horrible." In what universe has she done anything different?
Yeah.
Not this one, I tell you that much.
People make too big a distinction between a baby that's still in the womb and a baby that's not. There's very little difference. Just because they haven't experienced any of the world, it doesn't mean you can just erase them.
It's funny because when I obviously before I became a Christian, abortion was one of those things where it just didn't bother me. I think partly because I didn't think about it too much. And then even after when I became a Christian, I encountered all these people that felt very strongly about it, and I didn't realize why. And now, after I prayed about it, now all I think about is it's one of the most horrific things I can think of. The most vulnerable person in society, an unborn child, being totally at the whim. Gosh, it's just horrific.
When I think it's a part of understanding the sacredity of life. And I don't think I understood it or appreciated it until I was a Christian.
Yeah, same.
Gosh.
I think we've thoroughly smashed the hot button of abortion for this week. Perhaps it might be time to move on.
I'd love to see the compiled total we've spent talking about abortion and Islam specifically.
Yeah.
It's
Abortion,
like
Islam,
70% of like of all of it, at least.
Total runtime.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one was quite an interesting one. So CBN, the second best news outlet on the planet.
Right.
Wow.
Right behind CNN, I assume.
No, behind us.
Oh. Okay.
Oh.
Right,
Yeah.
you are.
CBN, who do have perhaps proportional ratings, well, representative ratings.
That's the one up they've got on us.
So I read an article today that they put. CNN publishes map of hate groups, which includes Christian organisations. So CNN article that features locations of so-called hate groups designated by the Southern Poverty Law Centre has some Christian organisations pushing back. So basically there's Family Research Council, Liberty Council, there's a bunch of Christian organisations that are on a list of hate groups that CNN have published. And obviously, like any good news network, all of these things on this map, there's no sort of actual reasoning or sort of documentation as to why they've deemed them to be hate groups. So, Liberty Council, what's this say? Liberty Council also cited SPLC's Mark Potok saying, "Our criteria for a hate group, first of all, has nothing to do with criminality or violence or any kind of guess we're making about this group could be dangerous, for example. It's strictly ideological." So Christian organisations are being deemed as ideologically hateful by CNN.
So they've openly come out and said it's got nothing to do. We're having to find hate group by people who do hateful things. It's entirely the people that we disagree with ideologically. Thanks for clearing that one up, CNN.
Basically, and this is all after the white supremacy thing. So because most white supremacists say that they're Christians. So what I think it is the media's trying to change this hate climate away from having all the heat on Islam, because we know Islam's a religion of peace now. We've all been enlightened on that one, and they're now that the white supremacy is in the stage, which compared to Islam is like a blip on the radar. It's like tiny. Everyone's trying to move the heat over onto them. Absolutely ridiculous. So after this happened as well, one of the guys the Family Research Council were one of the ones that was on this list, right? So FRC's Tony Perkins, one of the, I guess, leaders of the Family Research Council, when the Charlottesville stuff happened, called for a day of prayer after the violence in Charlottesville. Does that sound hateful?
Yeah, for sure, man. Absolutely, 100%. There's nothing more hateful. Nothing more hateful than praying after a horrific event like that, I gotta say. I mean, as a hater, personally, I did praying after that. And I did it specifically in spite of them.
Yeah.
Chairman of the of the founder of Liberty Counsel, said, "I'm shocked that CNN would publish such false report on the heels of the Charlottesville tragedy. To lump peaceful Christian organisations which condemn violence and racism with the KKK, neo-Nazis and white supremacists is offensive. This is the epitome of fake news and is why people no longer trust the media."
It's so stupid, isn't it? I found like a little list of the types of hate groups that they that they split people into categories of.
Yeah.
You can guess that like anti-Western, feminist, or Muslim groups don't come into that. Absolutely 100%. They're not even a category. But then you have this made me laugh. So the smallest, but it is in there. Apparently, Christian Identity is this kind of hate group. So a hate group that has a Christian identity, that is just bizarre.
I mean,
another one that and
Yeah.
then you have like racist skinheads, white nationalists, anti-Muslim, Ku Klux Klan, and then there's one category just called general hate, and I'm wondering what that is.
General hate.
It's just some no man's land of meaning that they just lump on people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's hateful. I don't really understand it. It's just hateful. I mean, this guy went on to say, "I echo the media's message after Steve Scalise was shot. Ratchet down the rhetoric, but I add that we should go a step further in this time and let us take a day to seek God and pray for Him to bring healing to our nation." So hateful. What a hateful man.
Oh my
But
gosh.
yeah, so CNN did a major derp this week anyway, and oh man, it's just annoying. It's annoying.
Bring it all
Just-
full
Isn't
circle.
before you,
okay.
are you bringing it full circle to wrap this up or?
Go on, man.
Well, no,
You've been
not
at half an hour.
necessarily.
Oh right. Okay.
No.
Well, yeah. Make your point. Make your point.
There's been something come out of this hate list thing. The infamous hate list directed Floyd Lee Corkins to the Family Research Council's office in Washington, where he shot a security guard and planned to massacre a group's staff. He told the police he targeted FRC because the SPLC labelled them as anti-gay.
Right. There we go.
Yeah. Basically,
Good job,
he's went
CNN.
to
You've got someone killed.
He's went to massacre
Right.
a bunch of pro-lifers, and yeah.
But by their own standards, we are hateful. What we're doing now is a hateful, an act of hate by how they stand in it.
Yeah, and I think Jake, I think you're overlooking something as well.
Alright.
Was he going to massacre pro-lifers, or was he just performing a post-birth abortion on them?
That's a good point.
That's what you've got to ask yourself.
Yeah.
That is a good point.
A question that
35
this
years
makes
after
me
conception.
a question that this makes me want to ask as well is like, so I mentioned before that they're turning the gaze of this liberal social justice from Islam onto the old white supremacy thing. It seems to me that if this sort of thing carries on, are we going to end up in a society where, unless you're an atheist, you're hateful?
It sort of seems that way, doesn't it?
But remember, Richard Dawkins was banned
I
for
can't hear
speaking.
anything.
Hello.
You guys
I've just
alright?
unplugged my microphone.
No.
Oh, wrong one. Just
Well, oh,
Hello?
hello.
hello.
All good?
Hi. Yeah, did you hear what I said?
Yeah.
Yeah. we
Yeah.
heard you. Adam was
What's the
about to say
thoughts on
something.
that?
Well, I think it's not about atheism in a sense, because remember, Richard Dawkins was banned from speaking at a university because by one of these Antifa groups because he was what's the term, anti-Islam, because he was anti-Islam.
Well, that's
And like,
Hmm.
I think it's not atheism that their goal is. I think it's just a postmodernist, bizarre view of faith where it's all okay and it's fine, and as long as it's very superficial and doesn't.
as
really
long as
mean
you're
anything.
as long as you've got this weird Oprah faith thing going on,
Yeah.
where
Right, yeah.
where God's an elephant and everyone's touching different bits of the elephant.
Mm. But it's still an elephant.
but it's still an elephant,
Right.
and everyone's touching it, and the elephant loves everyone.
What's the word? Ecumenical, isn't it? As long as you've got some kind of ecumenical faith, doesn't matter what you call yourself. Then and only then are you not hateful.
Yeah. Basically, one that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's
A faith without conviction.
Yeah, it has no impact on your life whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, I keep wondering what is the goal of these. What is the goal of these huge movements? Because they wouldn't get so far if they didn't have some kind of huge financial backing from somebody. There is some agenda somewhere. Somebody is paying for this radical pro-Islam agenda. Somebody's paying for this radical far-left thing, and I don't know what it is.
I think if you make society the way it's going, you can sell them anything, can't you? Really. These people can be sold anything.
It's true. Like, have you seen all the jokes that 4chan have put on? They're like just troll people who are like they're like start movements, like let's boycott Santa Claus at Christmas time and stuff like that. And then like as soon as it hits Tumblr, it's just like everyone sets on fire about Santa Claus, and like Coke adverts are getting torn off of the billboards and that. Just kicks off.
I mean, it is just. I mean, take this bizarre place we're all heading into, and then you take the fact that we do live in a post-truth society, a postmodern society, and I mean, how could we be destined for anything else other than destruction at this point? And if you look at look at how gender's become so confused, and then how sexuality's become so confused, and then take all these factors. I mean, like I say, the only place we could be heading as a society is destruction. That must be the only goal in mind for any of this, because it's not like, I mean, take these Antifa guys. I had a huge revelation about them today, right? Are you ready to hear? You ready?
I'm ready to hear your knowledge bomb, my friend.
Let's go.
Okay, so Antifa, as you guys have heard of, I presume.
Yes.
Yeah, the anti-fascists. Well, I was looking at them and I was like, they remind me of something, but I can't think of what it is. And then I remembered a talk by Dinesh D'Souza. He says how they're a bit like Hitler's brown shirts. And then I remembered, actually, yeah, that's exactly what they are. Their whole job is exactly like Hitler's brown shirts, to go around and physically intimidate any opposition to their viewpoint, silence any opposing voice to their viewpoint. And then I realized, like, the only thing these guys are missing is a Hitler. The only thing these guys are missing is a charismatic leader to soak up the power vacuum that they've collected. And that made me realize that I'm quite thankful for Donald Trump now. Can you imagine Hillary with this workforce of people ready to shut down anybody that disagreed with you and labeled you as a Nazi or a racist?
I never even thought of that. That's terrifying.
I know. And then and it's not helpful the fact they've got the mainstream media on this side as well.
Well, that's why government needs to look like lots of people that disagree with each other. Because if they all agreed with each other, it'd be a problem when they're wrong, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But, you on a completely unrelated note, you wouldn't mind linking me the stream, would you, Jake?
The stream, yeah, sure.
Yeah, cool.
In other news.
Yeah, let's move on. In other news.
In other news, I've recently been linked to stream.
I was actually just gonna say, oh gosh, I forgot it because I'm trying to multitask.
Jake, what have we told you about
that? There we go. There's the stream for it.
No way.
No, yeah. So I was just thinking about like, William Lane Craig was talking about this recently on a podcast I was listening to. He was talking about how nowadays we're moving into like a postmodern society, which obviously we can understand. And like, it seems like, I don't know about yous, but I'm like a little bit younger than yous, but it seems like the only people that I ever meet are people who subscribe to the classical kind of ideologies, which is what I would say that we three have. That like truth is truth and that's what it is. And like postmodernist, it's like we've completely jumped over the modernist era in ideologies and political ideologies. Do you know what I mean? Perhaps I'm just talking out of my backside.
Could you elaborate, Sari, as to what you mean? I think it got a little lost somewhere.
You know what? Doesn't even matter. It has no bearing.
No,
on
I'm
what
in,
we're
I'm
talking about.
interested.
I'm interested too.
Right. So okay. So like, there was the classical period that was like most of history, right? Of ideologies that like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
go out and you find out what the truth is, and then you cling to that truth, right?
yeah.
And you find ways to defend that truth.
Mm.
And then there was the modernist era when it's you look at things. It has an objective meaning, but you can find it through different ways. Like if you imagine like a work of art, like a painting, right?
Mm.
Like the modernist type stuff is like Picasso and all of that.
Mm.
You know, like weird, almost symbolic. You know what I mean?
Impressionism.
Yeah, exactly. Impressionism, things like that. That's like the modernist era. Now there's postmodernist, where it's just like nothing is true. You do whatever you want. There's no objective meaning in anything. And I don't meet anyone who would consider themselves in the modernist category. I only ever see people who are like classical ideologists and postmoderns. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I sort of get what you mean. Most people, it's like if they're gonna go any further from saying, you know, the truth is truth, whether you like it or not, they're just sort of they go from it on an extreme level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's this
So
photo
you-
that you've just
No, it's just I linked you guys to a stream. I was just wondering
Oh my
if I was just wondering when you said that. Are you saying most people you meet aren't postmodernists? Is that what you mean? So
No, they are. They're
Everyone
either
falls-
postmodernist
yeah.
or classical.
Yeah.
how do you mean classical? Sorry, I'm getting a bit confused here.
Like Socrates.
Yeah,
Okay.
like it's just you search for the truth. You don't know anything to begin with. You search for the truth, and you find the truth, and you cling to the truth. Right, like the proper philosophical, logical, rational way to do things is basically what I would say is the classical ideological position.
Mm.
And the only people I ever meet seem to be like that or totally postmodern. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Oh, I see what you mean.
The truth is subjective types.
Yeah, exactly.
I think. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
I think.
Am I wearing an orange shirt?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Who knows, fam? Who knows?
Yeah.
But I think I see what you're getting at here. I think definitely postmodernism isn't new for sure.
Oh, no, of course
It's
not.
always been around. Whether it's moved into the mainstream or not is the question, isn't it?
It's newer than
Like-
classical ideology. You know what I
I
mean?
think the thing that makes postmodernism appealing to people, and again, it's a common theme, and perhaps I repeat myself a lot on stuff like this, but out of the three, it's by far the most intellectually comfortable. It's by far the most ethically comfortable.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to actually investigate because it doesn't matter. You don't have to argue your point because it doesn't matter. The consequences of other people having different opinions don't matter. The consequences of you being wrong don't really matter.
I think that is a big reason. But one thing as well, I'm always amazed at how people could be. I mean, I guess you're right. It is comfortable. It is just a level of comfortableness. Because I was going to say, I'm always amazed at how people can be comfortable with that. Because it must be. I mean, it must be a huge source of depression. You know
It
what
must
I mean?
be scary.
But people are. And no, it's not scary because people just don't think about it.
Right, yeah.
People, what it is it's the one that leaves you most open to being able to justify doing whatever you want in your life.
Yeah.
Doing whatever you want. It's lawless. It's what it is. It's lawlessness in logic, lawlessness again in morality, lawlessness in nature.
I think we talked about this on the first episode of the podcast, and we talked about how postmodernism was like the last kind of sign of death of the Roman Empire.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and as well, though, I think I think it's also we live in. Maybe it could be on the rise. I'd need to look it up. It could be on the rise because we probably live in the most comfortable society in the history of the humanity.
It's a good point actually to ask. Do you think you get many postmodernists in the Middle East?
Almost certainly not.
I don't think you do because they live in the real world.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess
Re-
it's
reality in Western culture, no matter how you look at it, really, at the end of the day, it takes place more and more on computer screens and in magazines and on the television than it does actually in what you could feel and touch and look at with your own eyes.
yeah,
Whereas in places like that, reality is right in front of your face and nowhere else. The reality of, for us, our understanding of what's going on in the world is based on what we've been told is going on in the world. It's all, do you know what I mean? It's all, our reality is actually detached from reality itself.
yeah.
Mm.
They experience reality through filters.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. And I don't think they do, and I think in a world where you don't experience reality through those features, those filters, you realise that truth is truth.
Yeah, you search for the truth.
Yeah, and you believe what you believe, regardless of its consequences.
I think as well it's got a lot to do with the fact that people on an everyday basis in cultures like the Middle East and in the Middle Ages, they were confronted with real evil, real suffering on a day-to-day basis. That's not to say that people don't now; they do, but I definitely think it's far more removed from the spotlight as it was back then. And I think because when you encounter something like the Black Death, for example, the Black Plague when that was around, then you probably would be very hard to be a postmodernist during a period like
And people
that, for example.
people care more as well, I think. We're taught in Western society not to care as much. I remember one of the things that struck me really early on when I became a Christian about the change that was made in me was when I was watching tragedy, even in fiction on the television, I found myself just crying at
Yeah, man.
at fictional characters dying or fictional characters losing their loved ones because I understood more the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
I was less detached from the reality of the situation, even though the situation didn't even exist. I knew what the implications were.
Softens your heart.
Well, in fact, to say knew what the implications were is wrong because knowledge doesn't equal understanding. It's more that I understood what the implications were, like because everyone knows the implications of death, and I think there's another level of sort of understanding as well in the Judeo-Christian worldview because you understand that death isn't natural. It's not supposed to be there. It's out of place.
That seems. I think that is something that most people with a mainstream opinion can agree on. That like whenever I'm talking to people, evangelizing them, and then they ask obviously about evil and suffering, I say when something dies, it doesn't seem right. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah,
It's not the way
it's
things
not
supposed
natural.
to be, and they will always agree with you. I think
That's interesting, though.
even if they never thought about it, they'll stop and think.
I've used that one before. People always talk about how natural death is today, and it's just not. And it's another instance where, again, these postmodern views, you might think that they're watertight and everything until you actually have to live them. They're not livable worldviews.
Yeah, exactly. When you're
It's not a
detached.
livable, it's not a livable worldview to think that truth is subjective. It's not a livable worldview to think that morality is subjective. Because you become a victim one day and then suddenly morality's objective.
Yeah, yeah.
But, if you think, I mean, the conversation that I want to have next time someone tells me that truth is subjective, especially if they've got kids, is to say, and I think Ravi's used this one, if you've got a kid, right, and that kid is abducted and ends up being killed, and you're looking at someone that's on trial because there's sizable evidence that he's the culprit of the crime, is the truth subjective?
Right.
Are you really going to sit there and think that the truth is subjective at that point? It's not a livable worldview.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that is what it is. I suppose that like when you're detached from reality in the way that we are in the West, and you get your worldview from the filters that are detaching you from reality, you never have to put the worldview that you construct into reality because you never have to go there.
Yeah, it's like it's easy to say that it's subjective whether or not something is true when the consequences of those truths have no bearing on your life.
Yeah.
You never see the consequences of the truths.
Hmm.
It's very easy to say, okay, well, it's subjective. And that's why it all changes when someone becomes a victim, or when someone's kid has been murdered, or that's why it suddenly changes, and people don't even consciously make the decision to change their mind on it. They'll just flip flop into back into the real world for a second.
Yeah. Shall we crack on?
Yeah. Okay. So the Russian court bans the Bible translation published by Jehovah's Witnesses. So, Jehovah's Witnesses study a translation of the Bible called the New World Translation, and it's interesting because Putin, I can't remember the way it was worded when I read it, but Putin basically made it illegal to outlaw someone practicing. I think
it was you couldn't. He said it was illegal to declare a sacred text as being
extremist.
Extremist, yeah.
That was it. Yeah. So in Russia you can't say that the Bible or the Torah or the Quran is extremist as a text.
Yeah.
Now the court, I guess it's the court. I don't know what the terminology is for their law system, their sort of legal system. But the court in Russia has basically found a way around it by saying, well, actually, the New World Translation is not the Bible.
Mm.
And I think historically, the Russian government has actually had something against the Watchtower Society. I'm not sure why. But they've historically sort of been opposed to the Watchtower Society, and so
it's weird that like they managed to get around it by saying that because it specifically says sacred texts, doesn't it? So like
that's a subjective thing.
Yeah, like what do
you can't objectively say that something is sacred.
Yeah, so like I don't know, it's tough. Them saying that it's not the Bible, the Quran isn't the Bible. That's also a sacred text, though. You know what I mean? Like it's a strange.
Yeah, but the New World Testament, the New World Translation. I don't know where my speech is going today. The New World Translation, it claims to be like it's meant to be a representation of the Bible, isn't it?
Oh,
It's meant to be a translation of the Bible.
I totally agree. It's not the Bible. Like it's just,
so I guess
it's a bad translation.
If Jehovah's Witnesses were to turn around and say, "Yeah, we know it's not the Bible, but it's our sacred book," which they're not gonna, they're obviously not gonna do, but then perhaps they wouldn't have a leg to stand on. But they sit there saying it's the Bible.
Right. I see. So that's where the crutch comes in.
I don't know if my feelings about this are right or not. If it's right for me to feel the way that I do about this, but I really don't care. I just really don't care about the fact that this book has been banned, because as I mentioned to you guys earlier, I agree that it's not the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one because like I don't know whether I agree with what Putin said to begin with.
I don't know if I agree that someone else's ideology should be banned, but it's, at the end of the day, it's a group of people that are trying to distort the character of Jesus.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Turn him into the angel Gabriel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it
was the Archangel Michael, I think. They think Jesus is.
Yeah. I mean, I disagree. I think we shouldn't ban any book for any reason, really. I think at the end of the day, it is just a book, and if we ban it, then you do in some way validate it. Like, you're not going to tell me that now they've banned it in Russia, that the sale of them is not going to go up. I guarantee you, the sales of it will go up because it's banned.
But I mean, the way I look at it is like, so book burning en masse has always been an awful thing. It's not good. It's never good for society. And that makes me think, in terms of sacredity, that perhaps books and the knowledge contained within books, the information, the wisdom, is in itself sacred as well. But what's more sacred? The knowledge and the books, or the gospel?
Well, the gospel would be more sacred.
Yeah, and this is the New World Translation is another way in which the gospel is distorted, and people get a poor understanding of the gospel because of these things.
Yeah.
Playing devil's advocate, because I to a degree agree with what you're saying, but I can't help but look at it that way.
Yeah, but I just think that we should. I mean, in a perfect world, the way you would stop that is by eventually the translation itself would be given up on. In a perfect world. But obviously, we don't live in one. Enforcing it, I don't know. I just never feel like I could get behind enforcing. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's tons of things I wish that we could just stop. You know what I mean? Like, ideologies I wish would just stop. And Jehovah's Witness is one of them.
But if you want to stop an ideology, you don't want to do it against people's will and by force. You just want to convince people that it's not true.
Well, I don't want to offer them the end of a gun or or a faith they don't really have.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think perhaps there's an issue that lies with the original law that Putin set, that like no sacred text, in quotation marks there, can be denounced as being extremist. And like I don't know whether I agree or disagree with that, because I would say that the Quran is extremist.
Yeah.
Well, I disagree with the sort of the initial part. Actually, I agree that the Quran's extremist.
Well, how do you define extremist? You know, is extremist just somebody who wants the whole world to be like them?
It's all very wishy-washy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Apparently, we define hateful in a pretty interesting way these days as well.
We're living in the age of faulty semantics.
Yeah.
Well, we're living in the age of postmodernism, aren't we? If a word doesn't mean what you want it to mean, just change it. Like phobia, for example.
Yes.
I mean, nobody's afraid of gay people.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, maybe some people are, but a Christian who holds to orthodox belief, a Christian isn't afraid of a gay person by any stretch of the imagination. But they've just changed the word phobia to mean hate because it fit their narrative.
Yeah. So, Daniel Mark, chairman of the United States Commission on Religious Freedom, there's a whole commission for this. He's the chairman. He states, the conclusion by any court, that the New World Translation is not a Bible is a nonsense. Likewise, Dr. Matthew N. Schmalz, Associate Professor of Religious Studies at the College of the Holy Cross, declares that the claim that the New World Translation is not a Bible is absurd. There's something about American politics that involves a lot of very sweeping absolutes. It's that makes me think of Donald Trump saying, "Oh, I know the Bible better than anybody," sort of thing. It's like, if you really think that, then you obviously haven't really looked at why most Christians don't consider it to be a Bible. I mean, bear it in mind, right? The initial Bible in Koine Greek, right? Well, the New Testament and then the Hebrew of the Old Testament. That's the purest form of Bible that we've got, right? Right, and so we make translations based off of that, and then in order to do that, typically we have a committee, a translation committee, and there'll be like, say it's 10 people, and then they'll be made up of a bunch of different people from a bunch of different ideologies and backgrounds. So you have Muslim people helping to translate it, you'll have Jewish people, Christian people, atheists helping to translate it, and these Bibles, you can look up the percentage of different beliefs that the people on this committee have to find out how you know, whether or not it's skewed in a certain direction, just so you know, it's completely, you know, all the information's out there. You know exactly how accurate it's going to be,
Right, yeah.
or what the chances of its accuracy are. Whereas the New World Translation, not one person on the actual committee involved in translating it actually was qualified in any ancient language whatsoever.
What? Is that real?
So what they've actually done, the only way I can understand it being possible for them to make that translation is that they've not translated it from the Koine Greek and the Hebrew. They've translated it from other English translations.
Yeah. Oh, goodness me.
And then changed it in whatever way they want to.
Yeah.
Surely that's the only way you'd be able to do it.
That's really silly. I didn't know that, man.
That none of them know Greek or Hebrew.
It is funny how different it is. Like, my dad loves talking to Jehovah's Witnesses about, like, about how different their Bible is to every other Bible. Because they just don't know. They just don't know that the translation that they're given is, like, so different.
Yeah, and it's, well, the
They're
ones
not
that...
given a rehearsed thing, though. They're given, like, this rehearsed... Like, they're given this
your
rehearsed...
mic's sounding naughty.
You're alright
What?
now,
Isn't
bud.
good?
Is that better?
Oh.
Yeah,
You're
it's
alright
better.
now. Yeah,
It's
start again, bud. Start again.
Oh, apologies.
It's
Mm.
Yeah, so basically, they've been given this, in several different lines of dialogue, haven't they? So
Yeah,
if you
we ran
said
into
to them,
this.
yeah, we did. If you say to them, oh, well, actually, it says a God. The New World Translation translates Jesus when he says about being God. He in the New World Translation they translate it to a God instead of God, to make it small g, the little God, when in reality there's no way you could translate the original Greek text like that. And then they would give you this huge spiel about how, well, the original Greek was actually in this term, and then if you look at the way this person translated it in this year and stuff, and then if you ask them to actually read Greek in front of you, they'd never be able to do it in a million years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the same with Mormons. They have a huge rehearsed spiel, and then if you ask them about it, they can't elaborate because all they know is this rehearsed script.
There's no dynamism to what they're saying.
Yeah.
Because it's a script. Yeah, it's mental. I mean, I remember when we were talking to a Jehovah's Witness in Liverpool.
Oh man.
And
that was like 4 hours.
I remember distinctly when as soon as I started talking, I wasn't even able to finish the sentence because it was like some muscle memory of the jaw kicked in as soon as he heard me saying what I was saying.
Yeah.
As soon as he like recognized that the point I was making was related to his translation of the Bible, he just started talking over me, talking about how they're all the same. He'll debate me with my own Bible, sort of thing.
Yeah.
You just show him how it isn't. Just like, oh man, just make a note of everywhere that it just changes completely the message, and just be like, yeah, check this out, mate.
Yeah. Well, the weirdest where it changes is in Revelation. That's where it starts to go bizarre.
Oh really?
When they start saying things like the way they translate the whole thing about the 144,000.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know that.
That's the most different.
Yeah, that's where it gets like what? So
it's like a earth and heaven being totally separate.
Yeah.
And then like Gentiles being on earth, like in a sort of a lesser salvation than those that go to heaven, sort of thing. Yeah. Really
well, it's
weird.
to do with the great crowd, isn't it? Like they believe that there is the great crowd, which is depicted as being gathered around the throne, and that isn't as important as the 144,000. But they're all in heaven. But the 144,000 get like special privilege just because. And I'm like, what? How does this make? And it's just bizarre stuff like that. Really weird stuff.
It does say that there's a hierarchy in heaven, though, isn't it? That's in our translation. There's 144,000 members, people who hold a certain type of office in heaven.
I don't know if it's a hierarchy. The 144,000 is the Jews, isn't it?
Is it?
Well, I could be wrong, but I always understood that as being that 144,000 people are taken from Israel, like literal Israel, and they're the Jews that have believe in Jesus, like Jews for Jesus type of people.
Right, right.
And then you've got the uncountable Gentiles.
Well,
I've not-
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different schools of thought around it because it is in the Book of Revelation.
I've
at the end
not,
of the
to
day.
be honest with you, that I've got a superficial understanding of it, but that's what I always thought it was.
Yeah, the most general term that I've heard, most general term, most general explanation. I don't know. Most repeated explanation I've heard, anyway, is that it's just a general figure, like a representative figure of a large number. Like to John, 144,000 would have seemed like a ridiculous number.
I feel like that's a cop out, though.
I agree. I agree. I think I agree with you, but I'm just saying that's the most repeated thing I've heard.
Yeah. I mean, because it goes into which tribe, like, each of those 144,000 are from. Like, how many are from each tribe of the original tribes, and stuff like that. So, I would just take it literally and think,
man.
well,
Actually, I read numbers as well not too long ago, and it has all the like it has exactly the amount of people who are in each camp and everything. I should have took notes.
yeah, but like it says like, oh yeah, 44 will be from Judah, a certain amount will be from.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but what was the original topic that we were talking about?
Them banning the.
Oh yeah, New World Translation. Okay.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. Pastor quits Trump's Evangelical Advisory Board.
All right. Okay.
Have you heard about this one?
No.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
So Trump has got an Evangelical Advisory Board that's made up of a bunch of American pastors.
Joel Osteen on there.
Huh?
Joel Osteen on there.
Oh, I don't know.
But
A.R. Bernard announced on Twitter on Friday that he's left the Evangelical Advisory Board. I'll read the statement that he made. In a social and political climate such as ours, it often takes a gathering of unlikely individuals to shape the future of our nation on issues of faith and inner city initiatives. I was willing to be one of those unlikely individuals, and that is why I agreed to serve on the President's Evangelical Advisory Board. However, it became obvious that there was a deepening conflict in values between myself and the administration. I'm sure by that he just means him and Donald Trump. I quietly stepped away from my involvement with the board several months ago and submitted my letter of formal resignation as of Tuesday, the 15th of August 2017. I'm always grateful and honoured to by any opportunity to serve my country. So
right. It's a shame it doesn't go into more detail.
And a bunch of the other pastors have been sort of called to leave the board as well.
By who?
By the public, because all these people hate Trump and all that, and there's plenty of Christians, I'm sure, that hate Trump. So many of Trump's religious advisors have stood by the president following widespread outrage over his response to violent clashes in Charlottesville, Virginia, while members of his Committee on the Arts and Humanities resigned in protest on Friday, capping off a dramatic week that included the stream of CEO resignations from two of Trump's business councils.
Yeah.
So that's
Bit of
pretty...
an exodus going on in the Trump thing. In the Trump's advice, Trump advisors make a lot of cash. It's like $200,000 a year.
Yeah,
I mean,
one of them said that he thought it would have been immoral for him to have leave.
Yeah,
for him to leave because he's counselling Donald Trump at the end of the day.
Yeah,
I would lean to agree as well. Disagreeing with someone from a Christian perspective, especially if you've been asked to counsel them, it doesn't mean that you should cease to have an influence on them. It means that
absolutely.
they need your influence.
Keep going until you get kicked out.
Yeah.
Or they start agreeing with you.
Yeah.
You don't leave. Oh gosh, I'm sorry guys, hang on.
But I've got to... Ollie, did you know that, this is just a side note, so how many people do you think Obama had in his and his evangelical
I've got
advisory
no clue.
board.
I was wondering that. I've got no clue.
Basically, the whole evangelical advisory board was something totally invented by Donald Trump. No president has had one beforehand.
assumed it would have been. It doesn't sound like an Obama-y thing.
No.
I
No,
figured
it doesn't.
Trump might have.
'Cause I was wondering, where are all the evangelical advisors telling Obama to back down on some of this stuff?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I don't see. Here's the thing I don't get, right? Like, why? I don't understand the people who are saying that it's immoral to be in that advisory position. Like, I mean, from a Christian perspective, like, surely from a Christian perspective, having a Christian there to advise the president, surely that's like a top-notch scenario for you.
I know why it is. I think it's because the way people are looking at it. It's not that you're there as an advisor. It's not that. Sorry for the movement of the mic. How would I word it? You're not there as an advisor so much to Donald Trump. Like, people are looking at it as though by being Donald Trump's advisor, that's like a representation of you. Like, you're representing Donald Trump.
Right, yeah.
When actually you're not the politician in that position at the end of the day. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're it's like a pastoral role. You're a counsellor.
I mean,
Is a counsellor gonna quit his job from counselling prisoners because he thinks that it means he's being poorly represented as someone that counsels prisoners?
Yeah, it's like the thing that like Trump has got them on like a puppet string.
Yeah,
instead of,
yeah.
like-
I mean, it's almost like, what does Trump need to be a perfect person before he has counsellors? That sort of doesn't make sense. Why would
Yeah,
he need
right.
counsellors if he was perfect?
Yeah, it's
I
a
mean,
bit daft, like.
I think Trump needs as many counselors as he can get at this point.
Of every
have you,
field.
have you seen that famous picture?
His
where-
counsellors need counsellors. Yeah.
That's true. They probably do a lot of these Christian. Anyway, have you seen the picture of Trump where it's Trump and it's Pence, and it's just when he got elected, Trump and Pence, and then it's like, just after he was inaugurated, then it's like Anthony Scaramucci, Steve Bannon, and then two other Trump advisors. Well, now everyone in that picture, other than Mike Pence and Trump, has left. Every single person. Trump's whole cabinet is having a mass walkout. And did you hear somebody who was like one of Donald Trump's friends? Was it his friend? I can't remember who it was. Recently came out and said that he believes Trump is going to resign before the end of the year because he says it's not what he signed up for. It's too stressful, and I think it's true because look at how. I mean, Trump basically has no chance. I'm not saying he's made a right move, but like he's got literally everybody in the world working against him. He's got his own party working against him. He's got the opposite party not giving up. He's got the mainstream media. There's
It's
nothing
like
he can do.
he could have done a good job, but I don't know how you could do a good job in that situation.
I really hope it. Even if he does resign, I really hope it tastes bitter. You know what I mean? Like I really hope it's bitter in the mouths of the mainstream media, but I know it won't be.
He's done more in the first couple of months than any president in history.
I know.
So I mean, he's already
yeah.
making waves, even if he does resign.
Yeah. I mean, and there's so much as well that he tried to do that was blocked. You know what I mean? Like the travel ban blocked. What else did he try and do that was blocked? I'm trying to remember now. I'll have to look it up. I can't remember. But like three of his really important things that he tried. Three of the really important things that he tried to promise would happen have been blocked. Oh yeah, repealing Obamacare again blocked. All these different things that he got elected promising. Oh, and the wall is another one. All these different things that he got elected promising. Basically, there's nothing he can do. If members of his own party say, "Yeah, it's not going to happen," there's nothing he can do about it. At this point.
Democracy.
Yeah, totally. Oh gosh, it makes you feel sorry for the guy on the one hand. You know what I mean?
That is really daft, actually, isn't it? That like the members of his own party are blocking him when like it was on those bases, I guess, that he was elected.
And that they, by proxy, actually have their jobs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's insane, man.
it goes to show that who are these people representing? Are they representing the people that voted for them?
Hmm.
They're not, are they? They're representing the media.
I mean, do you guys think he will resign, Trump, at the
No,
end
I
of the
don't
year?
think so.
I think he's got really strong will.
I could see it though. You know what I mean? I could see it. I could see Trump looking in the mirror, remembering when he didn't have to worry about all of these things, remembering when he was loved by people in the media, and I could see him going, "Do you know what? Screw this."
It
You know what I
sounds
mean?
like a comedy skit when you describe it, dude. It sounds like you're gonna see him like standing in front of his bathroom mirror, like just looking in, like, what have I become?
Mhm.
well, I could picture that as well. Like, I don't know, because he was rich, he had fun. Don't get me wrong, I don't think he was happy. And then all of a sudden, he's been thrown into this situation. He thought people wanted him to help, and now everything he tries just gets blocked. Not even by people; it's mostly blocked by politicians. Do you know what I mean? It's not even by like, and then his popularity is just taking a nosedive, and it seems like no matter what he does, it doesn't work out. And like anything he does that's right, is barely talked about. Like the North Korea thing. Do you guys, how much ruckus was even our newspapers in the UK, the Independent, the Guardian, how much were they going on and on and on and on about Trump? And Jeremy Corbyn comes out and he's like, oh, Trump and North Korea should tone it down a little tad. And everyone's like, wow, Jeremy Corbyn, what a genius. And then like, oh, Trump, North Korea backs down, completely backs down. And what do the papers say about it? Nothing. It's just a ghost town. Do you know what I mean? Anything good he does is just not talked about.
That's
At
true.
all. It's just gone. How is his popularity supposed to go up if after every victory he does, it's just silence? Total silence.
Every victory is silent, and every defeat is just
A deafening, isn't it?
yeah, exactly.
It's this media demographic again, man.
Gosh. But trust in the mainstream media is at an all-time low.
Rightfully
Now.
so.
I think I agree.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Get them out.
Talking of North Korea, on a different note, I've been seeing lots of articles. I don't know if it's at an all-time high or anything. Lots of articles about how loads of North Koreans are deciding not to worship the
God Emperor.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Un dynasty, the Kim Jong dynasty, and they're becoming Christians. And like, well, most of the people that are worshipping other things than Kim Jong Un are being Christians. There's currently estimated to be about 70,000 of them in the sort of, I guess, death camps in North
Death
Korea.
camps? Oh,
The
God.
death camps, yeah.
Christianity
Or the-
death camps, are they?
Well, I don't know what they're calling them, but they're basically death camps. The conditions are awful. The survival rate is really low.
Yeah.
Like proper
Well,
disgusting.
it's a concentration camp, isn't it?
Basically, yeah.
And then they're also shipped out as basically slave labor to Russia and China.
And it's sort of it ties back to the whole thing about people that actually live in reality, like aside from the Western world, people that actually sort of live where their reality is just what they can feel and touch and see. You believe what you believe, and it's, as far as you're concerned, it's true. There's nothing you can do about it. If it's true, it's true, and if you believe it because it's true, then so be it.
Yeah.
No matter
If
what the
you-
consequences.
If you seriously spend your time trying to organize and do protests to try and tackle feminism in the West and ignore what's happening in the rest of the
know.
world, you do not live in reality. You just don't.
Is the greater cause really the Free the Nipple campaign?
I know.
Really?
What a waste of everyone's time.
I
though. You
know.
what I mean?
It's such a ruse, and like it's
so
all.
well said.
It-
Sorry, that was class.
Yeah.
It was.
It's such
You
a
summed it
ruse
up.
because people think that's really that is at the forefront of ethical endeavors in the world today, is feminism that doesn't really exist anymore in our society.
I think that if the West has any causes that need to be addressed and fought for, it should be one of them. Definitely should be abortion, for sure.
And I'm just thinking, it ties back round again to the point made about how postmodernism is all very well and good if consequences of what happens in the world, they don't relate to you, they don't come back to you. So people are feminists because they think that, they suddenly think that their liberty is at risk, even though it's not actually true, really. But just even the suggestion that their way of life is at risk in some way, and they'll be a feminist. But no one's worried about the 70,000 Christians in North Korea being tortured every day.
Well, it's weird in Western culture now. We live in this weird sort of hypothetical. I mean, I'm gonna say it again, but we live in a weird hypothetical danger postmodern era. Like every time you see a news story, the thing that's other than obviously these terrible terrorist attacks, every time you see a news story, it's the thing that they're trying to scare you with isn't something that's happened, but it's something that could potentially happen. Like nuclear war could potentially happen. Donald Trump could potentially be a fascist. All these things that don't have to be true. That's what they're trying to scare. I mean, it's a culture of fear, isn't it? They're selling and buying fear a lot of newspapers. And it's like the NHS privatizing
the economy of
potentially. Fear. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. The people who live in these horrible, godforsaken places like North Korea, they don't live in a world of potentials because they're living in a horrible, horrible reality. And then we live in a world where we are so comfortable we have to create potential dangers just to sell papers. Do you know what I mean? It's totally backwards, isn't it? Really bizarre.
If I can move on, still speaking of North Korea, about 100 years ago, there was a prophecy given by someone named Yalkut Moshe, which means collection of Moses in Hebrew.
Okay.
It said the prophecy states that when a solar eclipse occurs exactly as it will next week, in the beginning of the month of Elul, kings of the East will suffer great loss, and this has been theorized to mean the North Korea will be suffering a great loss.
It's funny. I was going to talk about whether or not the eclipse relates to anything biblical because it's in Revelations as well. An eclipse, a big eclipse.
And so I was thinking about it. It was funny that you mentioned how that a lot of people are turning away from Kim Jong-un and towards Christianity,
as well as the fact that for the first time the Koreans have had to sort of back down from America.
So the side issue that I sort of want to get at as well is, do you guys think the prophecy still exists now?
Prophecy is a general term.
Do genuine prophecies, does God still provide genuine prophecy?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, cool, I agree.
Wait a minute, gang. I feel like,
have you not heard about the guy that went into a cave and got a prophecy from a talking donkey?
What, recently?
No, sorry. No, I was just talking about. I was just teasing Muhammad again.
Oh right, okay.
Well,
I didn't know that was the thing that Muhammad did.
Sorry to interrupt you, Adam.
No. Yeah, like I one thing I was confronted. Do I think prophecies still exist? Sure. Yeah. Do I think prophecies that add anything to scripture exist? Absolutely not. Do I think that is it possible that a Korean prophecy could be true? Probably not, unless it in some way was given to a Christian or by a Christian or whatever reason. But one thing I've been challenged with recently is that demonic prophecy, the idea of demonic prophecy, because you have Paul in the Bible talking a lot of, this is so off track, but anyway, you have Paul talking in the Bible about a woman who follows him. Do you remember, who had the spirit of prophecy? And she went around, and then Paul eventually prayed for it to stop because she was disrupting it, and she was prophesying over him with some demonic spirit of prophecy.
Right.
Now, I was at a charity that I help out at, and one thing that there's a lot of atheists there, and the one thing that confused me was when they started talking about when they went to go speak to mediums and stuff, and mediums who gave really specific, direct prophecies over their life.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that must be demonic then. And then I was like, so is it possible that demonic prophecy is a thing? Does that mean that this North Korea thing, is a demonic prophecy? Who knows? I don't know. What do you guys think? We're talking crazy.
I mean, it could be.
Have I gone insane?
It's
Have I gone
possible.
cuckoo?
I mean,
It's possible.
in the realm of like demonic prophecy, I'm 100% convinced that like demonic stuff exists. Like, and prophecy could very well be a part of that. Like personally, I don't know if you guys agree. I think Todd White is gets some demonic prophecies and all that when he talks about getting words of knowledge and all this. I think that guy is mistaken, big time.
Oh.
But
I've not made my mind up yet about Todd White. Well, to be fair, I've not thought about Todd White in a while, but I've not made my mind up about him.
I've
be honest.
separated myself from that guy for a while.
Well,
What do you think, Adam? Oh, you're all about him.
well, I mean, I definitely used to. I definitely used to.
I haven't watched him since we went to see him, to be honest.
And here's the thing. I'm not saying everything that happened at that event was good, because absolutely some of it wasn't. I think a lot of it was just pure immaturity. Maybe some of it was demonic, but you must admit his talks were good. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I would have to concede that.
yeah, his talks were good, but I don't know. Some of the stuff he's done recently, I've been very critical of.
His talks were really good.
Yeah,
And I would say that far too much of what went on during that thing was demonic. Like,
yeah.
so I mean, for anyone listening, to explain what happened. So there's a conference in Liverpool every year, like a Christian conference that we went to, and I mean, at the time, I don't know if you've been to any bigger conferences than that, Adam, but like, I've never really been to a Christian conference that size.
I've been to bigger ones.
Yeah, but
they're awesome
Oh,
most of the time.
la-dee-da.
I know.
But yeah, and Todd White was there, who's an American preacher. But I mean, just because his talks were really good and it made me feel really good, it doesn't mean
I know that.
that guy's not got some demonic stuff going on. Like, I would say the focus of the sort of demonic things that I feel like I experienced wasn't really around Todd White. It was more around a lot of the people that showed up. Yeah, like I never in a million years thought that I'd go to a Christian conference and see so many Christians that like had to be exorcised of all the demons that were inside them.
Yeah, that was bizarre.
That doesn't seem consistent to me. Or,
Yeah.
you know,
It's not
that was strange.
dark can't reside with light.
Yeah, like there must have been like over like in a day like 30 odd people like having demons pulled out of them. Like, what's that all about?
Yeah.
It
Like,
is
and they're
bizarre.
Christians.
It
I'm
is-
sure.
it is
I'm sure
bizarre.
there were probably some fakers as well. I don't know how much of it was legit, but some of it was like looked inhuman, like what people were doing on the floor. Looked, and the noises people were making, it was inhuman. It was the only way I could describe it.
But so, okay. Well, I like I say, I'm very, very critical of Todd White. I'm not a fan by any stretch of the imagination. I do appreciate some of his talks, some of his early stuff. They are quite good. Lately, my only problems with him have been, I mean, one thing that really annoys me is how people can be so critical of him. And I'm not getting at you here, Jake, but what I mean is sometimes you'll see people criticize him for things, and then when you do the research yourself, you realize, oh my gosh, that is not what he said by any stretch of the imagination. I think that's a problem that the church has right now. We're so easy and quick to jump on people.
Offense taken.
Like that. Well,
I'm just
screw you. No.
Whoa!
I'm kidding. But like one thing he did recently was where he like this Christian, I'm not going to say which website it was, but this Christian website basically said Todd White claims he can predestine people salvation that God didn't, and I was like, okay, that's just insane. And then I clicked on the actual clip that they claim to use, and he doesn't say anything like that
Yeah.
by any stretch of the imagination. He's talking about how he looks at people, and then sometimes he feels led by the Spirit to talk to those people, and that's literally it. And they took him so out of context, and I've seen that more than once with what Todd White said. So I think we can jump on people like that too easily as well.
I would just say I haven't actually seen any like articles or like expose videos on the guy. This is just entirely me just watching like videos of him, and I listen to his podcast for a while and stuff like that.
He has podcasts. I don't even know yet.
Yeah, it's
Hello?
not like it's not like separately recorded. I think his podcasts they're just like excerpts from his talks and things like that.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
Well, no, I want to know, Jake, why specifically you feel he is. I mean, you said he was demonic. Like, I want to know specifically why you think that.
well, for me, it basically comes down to what the Bible describes as being fruits of the Spirit. And I've seen some of the states that he puts people in, and I cannot see that stuff being reflected.
It's not scriptural,
publicly.
yeah.
Okay.
That's essentially it.
I remember it so vividly when he was walking around the room, like saying fire, touch, like
Yeah.
fire, touch, and like just touching people on the head. And they would be like on the floor for like 2 hours throwing up.
Yeah, it just doesn't
Yeah.
sound biblical to me. Like, that's,
Yeah, I agree. But where are you willing to draw the line between demonic and just immaturity? You know what I mean?
Immature.
What-
What do you mean by immaturity? Like playing along just because, like,
Well, it could be you're worried about what other Christian. I mean, if we talk about Todd White specifically, it could be that he genuinely believes he's doing the work of God and he's just being immature.
oh yeah, I mean, perhaps he does.
And,
Perhaps he does
but
But I mean, the fruit is in the way that he is in the people that he puts
There's a
into
couple
these
of
states. You know,
there's a couple of points to be made as well. First off, I mean, even in Revelations, I'm pretty sure it's explained that the Antichrist isn't going to be aware that he's the Antichrist.
right?
I don't think the Antichrist. I could be wrong in that, but or it might just be a common interpretation. But I always understood that the Antichrist isn't actually really going to be aware that he's the Antichrist. Not saying Todd White's the Antichrist, but it's a comparison.
No, yeah, I think it's totally like understandable that someone could be demonic without realizing that they're demonic.
But for him to touch someone and them to be convulsing on the floor and vomiting, that's not immaturity. There's,
but if,
you know,
yeah, I mean, again, I'm playing devil's advocate because I do think some of the stuff that goes on there is demonic, and I do think sometimes he does say unhelpful some unhelpful things. Like, I mean, it's easy for him to talk about the money the way that he does when he's making so much cashish. You know what I mean? And it
does
bothers
he have
me.
a lot of cash?
He
must
is
do.
earning tons of cash, tons of cashish. He's basically made a brand, hasn't he? With Lifestyle Christianity, it's a brand. And as well, like one thing that really bothered me was the way he talked about Kenneth Copeland. And Kenneth Copeland, it just is a false teacher. He just is. There's no way around it. And he really looks up to Kenneth Copeland, and he shares stages with him and stuff. And that's the thing that really, I mean, I'm not going to be one of these guys that says he associates with Kenneth Copeland, therefore he's a false teacher, because I just think that's counterproductive. But
Judge him on his
that
own
does
merits,
bother me.
sort of thing.
Yeah. But I will say this: we do have to be very aware of immaturity, church as well. We do have to be very aware that people will do things that they think are right, and they could still be Christians, when in reality it's just immaturity and not deliberate deception.
Well, yeah, I think immaturity might be something that he actually targets as well, because if you think about his preaching, he does preach a very superficial gospel as well. When you really think about it.
How do you mean, sorry?
Well,
How do you say?
it's very hippie Jesus. All that he seems to think really exists within the gospel is just love, and like that, as though that's literally it.
That was
that's all.
That was the main thing that kind of turned me away from him to begin with. That he was preaching
that-
just the one side of the coin.
Yeah, I think that goes hand in hand with the immaturity aspect of things.
It does actually. There's a biblical foundation for that when Paul talks about milk versus meat. Like when you're on milk, like an early Christian, it's all about the love of God, and it's the love of God that draws people
Yeah.
in. But then the meat is when you learn about the
You-
tough things, like the
Yeah,
nature of
you learn
salvation
harsh
and
lessons.
justice and
You learn harsh
Yeah.
lessons. You've got to wrap your head around difficult concepts.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think perhaps we've
We'll
perhaps
leave
we've
it alone.
grilled Todd White enough as well.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I've got
Yeah.
another topic to bring to the table here. I'm hoping you've got.
I've got one more.
Go on.
So Boy Scouts open up membership to transgender boys, and what it means
Oh.
by transgender boys is girls that think they're boys.
Uh-huh.
So the Boy Scouts of America says it will begin accepting members based on their gender identity, opening the door for transgender boys to join. Under new policy which takes effect immediately, membership in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts will be based on the gender indicated on an application. Previously, the organisation relied on an individual's birth certificate to determine the eligibility for its single gender programs. However, that approach is no longer sufficient as communities and state laws are interpreting gender identity differently, and these laws vary widely from state to state. BSA spokeswoman Effie Delamarcos said in a statement on Monday. So,
This just reminded me of the. I don't know if you've seen when someone comes and asks Ben Shapiro a question, and he's like it's about he mentions the Boy Scouts, and he's like, you cannot be a girl in the Boy Scouts, and then the person's like, well, where does it say that? Where's that rule? It's
Yeah.
like it's in the name Boy Scouts. It's pretty funny.
they need to open up a new one, the Confused Scouts,
Yeah. Oh god.
I mean, it's aiding and
the Bi-Curious Scouts.
Oh gosh,
Bi-curious. I forgot all about that word.
it's aiding and benefiting a mental illness at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they should feel ashamed of themselves, and they should be imprisoned for child endangerment.
I mean, just having lasses in the Boy Scouts doesn't seem like a good idea.
Hmm?
Like, even if they think they're blokes, like the physical differences between like boys and girls, sure that's going to play havoc in the Boy Scouts.
Well, I mean, that's something that I can actually talk about with quite some authority. In
Yes.
fact.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys knew, but I'm actually a debater specifically on the scouting
right, yeah.
realm of things.
But
It's actually really
So-
lame, as it turns out.
right, yeah. Thank you very much, guys. So I grew up in the Boy Scouts, and when I was a young scout, through most of my time in the Boy Scouts, it was only boys at Scouts, and slowly there started being talk of girls that wanted to join, and eventually a couple of girls started joining, and like we've all worked ever since. We've normally had like at least one or two girls in there, and it's actually made no difference on anything.
Oh really?
A lot of the time they're the most keen. It's weird. Like, I don't know if it's because they're trying to offset the fact that they're girls by like being more keen and like ready and raring to just get on with stuff and do things. But normally they're actually some of the better kids that we have there are the girls. Like, you get the shy ones that are sort of girly girls, don't want to get their hands dirty, but it's quite common for a girl to join and they'll be like really sort of into it.
Hold up, lads. Ollie's a feminist. No, I'm just kidding. That's interesting though. That's
So
good.
is your view on it, Ollie? So what? Transgender kids in scouts, so what?
I see. That's where I have my difficulty with it, because I think it could be a recipe for all sorts of disasters. Having a girl coming to Scouts saying that they're a boy, everyone's got to call them a boy, and they dress up as a boy.
Gosh.
I don't know. I think it can go so wrong. Also, like, so there's again, this is another element of where it comes back to when it's like your kid's safety involved and stuff like that. The subjectivity of your child's gender sort of will go out the window, I think, because the policy that we operate by, I don't know about in America, is that if we have a girl at Scouts, most Scout groups sort of then need a female Scout leader to go camping and stuff like that. Because if that girl's got any sort of issues, like lady issues or anything like that,
Man
Then-
can't do much.
a bloke can't help out with
The
that.
very mention of ladies' issues would get a bloke like supervisor like, oh gosh, what am I gonna
Yeah.
do here?
Arm off skis me like.
Yeah, find
Yeah.
the nearest woman and let her deal with it.
You can't a bloke can't get involved, but by their own logic, you should be able to say, well, no, that's a boy,
Yeah,
so he can get involved.
that's yeah.
but
Oh gosh.
I feel like suddenly the parents of these young children will be like, oh no, I don't actually feel comfortable with this. Oh, but don't get me wrong, he's a boy, but I don't feel comfortable with this.
Well, in that regard, one thing that I seem to see is that like most of the time the father's like the figure that's like, this is weird, like this is not on, like that's a girl, not a boy.
Mm.
But the woman is the one who's normally like, the mother is normally the one who's just accepting of it, generally.
Mm.
So you gotta get the fathers on board. Basically, bring the fathers along to Scouts and see if they're still alright with it.
Mm.
I mean, I think there will be a time when these kids, this current generation going through this LGBT disaster, will look at the people like the Scouts, people like you, Ollie, right?
Mm.
They'll look at you and go, why did you let us carry on believing that lie? That I could be another
With
gender?
resentment, yeah.
Here
Yeah.
comes the guilt trip.
Ollie Ballad, why did you let me believe I was a girl? Did you realize I'm sterile now? That because I was given all those hormones, I can't
I've
have
mutilated
children now?
myself, yeah,
Yeah.
because I had a mental illness and you did nothing about it.
Oh man.
That's true. Yep. And on that basis alone, I'm thoroughly on the side of they've made a bad decision here with letting. Yeah.
Well, anytime you aid an illness, it's not good. It's like Ben Shapiro says, when his granddad had schizophrenia, to tell him, yes, you're right, the people on the TV were talking to you, was never going to help.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I was watching Shrek the other day, and I was amazed at how, because Shrek is nearly 20 years old, let that sink in. But I was amazed at how like there's this wolf, and obviously it's the wolf in the Red Riding Hood, and he dresses up as a girl all the time, and they refer to it as with contempt. Oh, it's just a gender confused wolf, as a joke. And I was like,
Right.
oh my gosh, that would never be
Yeah,
allowed
man.
these days, would it? Like,
Well, they say that in Shrek.
yeah, in Shrek.
That's crazy. Boycott Shrek. Let's get it
Yeah.
started on 4chan.
It's just little things like that. You start noticing it in culture. There's
Yeah.
another thing I was watching where somebody was talking about how ridiculous it was that when men dress up as girls and making fun of them and stuff, and now to do it is being a hateful thing.
Mm.
When in reality, it's just aiding and benefiting a mental illness, isn't it? Telling them you will be a girl one day, but in reality, you'll never have a womb. You'll never have menstrual problems. You'll never know what it's like to be a mother. You'll never know what it's like to have all of these things. In fact, you still suffer from things like prostate. You still have high risk from prostate, all these different things. And like you said, the one day there'll be bones and there'll be men bones. It won't be women bones.
Yeah, and it's funny as a result of you acting on this wanting to be a woman thing and mutilating yourself. Not only will you never be able to experience life as a woman, still, despite what you've done, you'll never be able to experience life as a mother. But now you'll never be able to experience life as a
Like, as
man either.
Oh yeah.
You've robbed yourself, and everyone that has helped you has robbed you as well of your ability to experience life as either of the two things. Two of the things that make up a huge amount of what your life is and what defines your life.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Our only fan was probably some small little trans kid from Whiz Beach or something, and he's been listening to us now, and he's just been bawling his eyes out. Oh gosh,
Sorry,
my life
bud,
was a
but-
lie.
I mean, let's be real.
But you're a dude.
You're just a bloke.
God, gosh, that's brutal.
I just feel awful for these people. I really do.
Yeah. That's the thing. Doesn't it just break your heart when you think about because their parents didn't say to them, like, no, you'll no, even if you have these feelings where you want to be a boy, you never can be. Not really ever.
You can
Because
be
their
whatever
parents-
you want.
I know. I like. Oh my god! It's like all these celebrity parents and stuff letting their kids do whatever they want. They're celebrated by culture, but the amount of psychological damage on those kids must be huge. Before they've even thought about it.
How many
Gosh.
people in North Korea do you think even want to be transgender?
That's a good point.
Or in the
wonder if
Middle
they-
East?
I know.
How many people do you think are sat there thinking, "Oh, I'd love to be transgender right now, but my society's not tolerant to it"?
Yeah. Disconnect from reality.
Yeah,
That should be the
totally.
title of this episode if we actually did titles for the episodes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was thinking economy of fear. That's
Oh gosh. Where's
God.
that come into it?
This has been a heavy episode, hasn't it? This one.
Yeah, man. We need some dirt of the week to cheer it up.
well, a lot of these are the only ones I've mentioned of that they're my derp of the
Yeah.
week things. Unless anyone
Yeah.
else has got any candidates.
I have one candidate that I
Go on,
kind
then.
of talked about in the chat. Alright, so Ali, do you want to do a little intro to Derp of the Week if we're going to move in?
Well, you do the intro
Oh, yeah.
of the week, mate.
Here we go. Here we go, gang. Get ready. Here it's coming. Oops. And my bolt. Okie dokie.
Crack on.
Welcome to Derp of the Week.
Nice. Right. What's the first nominee there, Adam?
We should probably re-summarize these as we mention them. If you
Yeah,
wanna
that's what I
run
was
it
going to
to-
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you want to
sure.
re-summarize them?
Yeah. So, first contestant for the derp of the week is the nation of Iceland, I think. And what
Didn't
was
we
it?
have a nation last week as well?
CBS as well.
Australia.
Yeah. So the nation of Iceland are trying to eradicate. They're trying to eradicate Down syndrome from society by killing Down syndrome fetuses for abortion.
Oh man, it's just. I mean, that's a really dark derp of the week. You know
It's
what I mean?
horrific. It's horrific. It's awful. It's an awful, awful thing. It's genocide.
Goodness me. I think the less time we dwell on that, the better, because we're already depressed enough after this week's episode.
And it's being celebrated.
Yep. Yep, it's a terrible ordeal.
Mm-hmm.
Next contestant.
Was it CNN? Probably.
I think that was CBS. CBS. Yeah, I'm sure.
CBS are the
and-
good guys, aren't they?
No,
CNN
that's
were the ones that.
CBN
published
are the good guys.
Yeah.
The Independent. I read an article that the Independent wrote about it as well.
It
But,
is CBS. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, they were the ones that put it on Twitter as though it was some like frivolous exercise.
Yeah.
So what's this? Sorry, what was the story?
It was CBS that put it on Twitter that you know
No,
they
yeah,
put
describe the thing. Recap what we're talking about.
they put on Twitter, oh yeah, Iceland is like on track to eliminate Down syndrome through abortion,
I
and then
see.
like
Right,
there was an uproar on Twitter about it. I'm sure there was a lot of people talking about how mint it was on Twitter as well.
right. So it goes to. Well, I suppose it goes to CBS really for coming up with that whole narrative.
And then who else was it, Ollie? Sorry.
So CNN as well, another news network
Right.
for putting various Christian
Yeah.
organisations on the hate map.
Yeah.
So labeling them as hate organisations.
My gosh, what losers!
Proper
The,
rejects, man.
I would like to see the full list because I don't know.
The list has
So
got
they have
900 things on, dude.
Oh, crikey!
Yeah.
Just do a quick search for things like the Muslim Brotherhood. Like, see if that's on there.
Yeah, the Islamic Caliphate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I know some black separatist groups are on there,
Oh wow.
but
really?
I don't remember seeing anything to do with Islam.
Yeah,
Nation of Islam is on there actually. Now that I think about it.
I think they probably made a concerted effort to get as many demographics on there as possible, and the reason is it's the same mentality as this Oprah religion thing, where all of the religions are right and beautiful and great. Because if you believe that all of the religions are right and beautiful and great, you at the same time believe in nothing,
Hmm.
really. And if you believe that they're all bad, you also believe that none of them are bad, really, at the same time.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's like you're creating so much noise that there's actually no information.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Iceland, CBS, CNN. Who else did you have?
What else did we have? The Boy Scouts,
Oh yeah.
All right. The Boy Scouts.
the transgender Boy Scouts. Which the more I think about it, the more I'm not really bothered about. But basically, the Boy Scouts have opened their membership. This is in America to transgender boys. Basically, because they're deciding not to sort of review applications into the Boy Scouts based on the gender on people's birth certificates, but just the gender like that they have given themselves on their applications. The Russian court has banned the New World Translation Bible, the one that the Jehovah's Witnesses use.
I don't know, I think that's debatable. I'm not sure if that's a total derp.
I wouldn't consider it a derp. It might be a poor judgment, but I don't think it's a derp personally.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You had another one, didn't you, Adam?
Yeah, mine is. I can tell you already that it is not a derp in the same level that these are, right? Especially
Right.
Iceland. It doesn't even come close to the seismic derp scale of Iceland, right? But are you guys familiar with a company called Rebel Media?
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Now you
Yeah, I
mentioned
do know.
this. This
Yeah.
isn't the British company, is it?
No, they're not a British company.
Not the Rebel Media that Tommy Robinson.
Yeah, it is them.
Yeah,
they're
it
not
is
a
that
British
one, yeah.
company. They're not. They're a Canadian company.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh right, okay. So the news network that Tommy Robinson works for.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, basically, so Jake, you know about Kevin McKinnon's people like that, right?
Gavin McInnes. Gavin McInnes, you mean?
Guinness, yeah, sorry. Apologies, Gavin. Basically, what has happened is Ezra Levant, their leader, has basically come under a bit of a controversy right now, right? Because it was basically found out by some people that used to work there. So if you look at who's left, so Faith Goldie's left, Colan Robertson has left. No word on Tommy Robinson yet. Gavin McKinn's is leaving. Co-founder Billy Lilly is his name, has
Billy
left.
Lilly.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh,
He's
get
left.
in.
And basically all these people have walked out, right? And it's because basically the whole company's business model was make fake charities, okay, and fake causes. Or some of them might have been real causes, like getting Tommy Robinson out of prison, for example. But then even when they'd raised money for it, it's like with Tommy Robinson getting lawyers for him, even when they'd raised money, they would continue to ask for money because they would then use that money over the top, shave it off of the top of the court case in order to basically to put in their own pocket, right?
So they would
Sustain
purposely
themselves.
set it up so they had money left over, sort of thing.
Yeah. And another one was they actually set up a fake charity trying to help. Because one thing is, if you look at any of the charities that they've made and all the petitions over the years, another thing is that they've got him on they've got the Ezra Levant, the guy in charge, they've got him on tape saying how easy it was to sell all the email addresses of people who had donated to other companies to try and sell stuff to them as well.
Oh,
And
wow.
another thing was they actually set up a fake charity. Yeah, sorry. If you look at any of the old charities that they supported, none of it ever went anywhere, ever, right? None of the court case. And then here's the thing that really upset me was Ezra Levant did this huge story about how he was setting up this charity to help Christians in Iraq, and he even was interviewed by one of my favorite Christian apologists, Michael Brown, on it. And I was like, wow, he's actually going to help people in Iraq. And he talked about the Christian genocide, and he set up this one thing he did for it was he set up a chat. He set up this donation in order to make a documentary about the Christian genocide in Iraq that ended up being 10-minute YouTube videos, even though they made hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds. It ended up being 10-minute YouTube videos. And the other thing, so they've set up this new charity for Christians in Iraq, and there's a lot of speculation that that's just totally fake and made up, which really made me angry and upset.
It makes me wonder how many other people are doing it, because I could imagine so many like YouTubers and like internet personalities doing the same thing, and you'd never know. You would just never know.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a dip. I mean, it's a pretty big... I'm disappointed in Rebel Media for that, man. I really like those guys.
Yeah, I was disappointed as well.
Reminds me of Coney 2012 as well, thinking about
Yeah. Oh, I'd forgotten about that.
it. That was oh man, that was mental. All of that.
I don't even know what all that was. What was that?
You didn't see...
I just saw the memes, Coney 2012. I've got no idea what it actually was.
You never saw the video?
No.
I did.
A guy made like some like guy that had a degree or something in film made like a documentary on a bloke called Joseph Kony, who was like an African warlord and had like child soldiers.
Right.
And then he like it was a really well made film about this guy, and like it basically made out that this guy was in Africa with like loads of power, like capturing loads of children and making them soldiers and stuff like that, and that it's still a really big thing. He's on the top of the FBI most wanted list and no one's ever found him, sort of thing, and he's got some reign of tyranny that us ignorant Westerners have never, like, that we just don't know about,
right.
sort of thing, and then made a charity to try and catch him.
Yeah.
Well,
and try and save all the child soldiers. He's a real guy as far as I'm aware, but
right.
like it was like he had power like 10 years ago, and sort of went into hiding, and he's not actually really been in the area that the video said he was in a long time. No one's seen him really.
Yeah.
You know,
even politicians got involved. I remember there was a US congressman trying to get funding in order to send some soldiers into the part of Africa he was supposed to be, even though there was nobody knew if he was even alive. At that point.
That's
like
insane.
no one has seen him in like 20 years or something stupid.
Yeah.
But the guy must have made millions. Like
I actually remember how much he made. He made 16 million.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Because part of his charity, like the thing of raising awareness, was he was selling like these little packs with like a wristband, like a Coney 2012 wristband, and like all these different things, maybe a leaflet in, and he was selling them for like, you know, like a little plastic wristband, and then like a leaflet, a necklace or whatever for like a tenner or 20 quid or something like that.
You know, I came so close to buying one, you know, in 2012.
I don't know if I can't remember it. I think I was quite skeptical about it at the time.
Yeah.
And I was just laughing at loads of people that actually pretended to care on Facebook, like as though they actually cared about the little brown children in some mythical country.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like they've never even been to Africa. They just want to look like that type of person that actually cares about stuff.
Yeah.
And
we're getting well off topic here.
Yeah.
Get back to date with the week.
Yeah. Well, yeah. To close that one up, the guy that started that campaign ended up getting arrested for masturbating in public.
Yeah. No way.
Yeah. In some like restaurant, some like family restaurant, they caught him like, you know, popping one out under a table.
That is mental.
Yeah, I think it just went to his head, and he went absolutely like proper head case, like. But yeah.
Oh man, I wish that was.
The derb of the week goes to Joseph Kony.
Yeah, for like 3 years ago or 5 years ago. No, right.
I think Iceland takes it, like, but yeah.
Yeah.
What, Iceland for the?
I vote Iceland anyway.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Iceland as well. It's a really dark one, but I think that's got to be the victor.
Yeah,
It's unanimous.
Uh-huh.
it's been done. I'm sorry, nation of Iceland. Gonna get a tweet. Here it comes.
You're normally the one to give them the official congratulations there, Adam.
In other news, Iceland has fallen. Iceland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Iceland dissolves government in complete despair, having been given derp of the week.
Oh man. Every time we bring this up, I kind of like imagine having that much power. If every week the first thing we reported on was how the person, state, or like
Yeah, the
organisation
last
that
person we
spoke
talked about is just
yeah, they just completely
Yeah.
collapsed.
yeah.
All right.
Would you guys like to play a game?
Oh, I wouldn't mind.
Well, the debating game.
Oh yeah.
All right.
All right,
Debate of the week.
take it away, Adam.
Sorry, I'm just writing this thing. Gosh, this is a long one.
How long's the podcast so far?
A minute 55. Sorry, a minute 55. An hour 55.
Here's my tweet. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Iceland, congrats! You just won our deep of the week.
Ugh.
You've just won our derp of the week for claiming to eliminate Down syndrome when in reality you were just aborting kiddies.
There you go, like.
All right. What do we think, lads? Who wants to go first for our new segment? Debate to Torontorama.
I reckon you grab a couple of the bad boys out of there, and we'll see which one we like.
All right.
Sorry.
Part 1. Oh, that doesn't look good. Why has it been ripped out? Oh, okay. Oh gosh. Some of these are ripped in half. So here we go. Number 1. Oh gosh. So the first one is Marvel movies are actually far-right propaganda.
Oh goodness me.
Oh, number 2. So let's have 3 options. Secularization is a good thing for society. That is tough. That is a tough one.
Oh man.
And the third one. Oh gosh, the last one is Hitler's mustache was a good thing for society.
I'm gonna go with that one personally.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we've got to do that one.
Okay, so you and Ollie, Jake and Ollie should go first, I think. And I will flip the coinage. Ollie, what would you like to be on the side of?
Heads.
Okay. If it is heads, Ollie is arguing in favour that Hitler's mustache was a good thing for society.
Well,
So we have a heads.
all right.
So I now have to argue that Hitler's mustache was good for society.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
correct, sir. Good luck with that one.
I shall set the timer. You have your 2-minute opening statement. Okay, for those who first time listening or whatever, this basically is a game we play where basically we have to argue totally random positions and points of view. Everybody gets 2 minutes opening statement and then a 2-minute rebuttal period followed by a 4-minute opening question and then a 20-second closing statement. Okay, Ollie, are you ready, do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, your 2 minutes starts now.
Okay, so the first thing that I want to point out is there needs to be a distinction made here. This isn't about was Hitler good for society. This is about was his mustache good for society. Okay, and I think, personally, if evil exists in the world, which it does, I want to be able to identify that evil as easily as possible. There needs to be some sort of defining visual characteristic that makes it easy to spot.
Hey, wake up.
Hitler's mustache was good for society on this basis, and this basis alone, as far as I can think of at the moment. So, no one in Germany ever mistook Hitler for just some random passerby. Everyone knew what Hitler looked like. All right, they knew that when they were walking past Hitler, that was Hitler. That was old Adolf going on his morning jog. You're never gonna get caught out by Adolf, not with that mustache. Okay, that's my first point. Not sure how much time I got left.
You've got about 40 seconds.
Okay. Also, it lightens the mood because Charlie Chaplin had that mustache, and he was a funny guy.
Wow.
When people see that mustache, they not only think of Hitler and the evil stuff that Hitler did, but they think of The Great Dictator, the film that Charlie Chaplin was in, who also had the mustache, that was also about a dictator. Both defining features of each of them, and then Charlie Chaplin makes a speech at the end that is his first speech on television, his first talking role on television, and is one of the best counters to Nazi ideology that has been broadcast on television.
It's true. It's a good speech.
Time is up. Okie dokie. Jake, are you ready for your opening statement?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's go now.
All right. So, I noticed that you try to kind of disassociate Hitler from his mustache.
Make sure you're not making a rebuttal. This is your opening
No, yeah,
statement.
I'm taking up my time with your voice. All right. My point is that these two things are intrinsically linked. I mean, they're physically linked by the hair follicles on his upper lip, but the purpose of Hitler's mustache absolutely led to the state of Germany. I mean, you cannot separate the mustache from the man. By all means, you can attribute it to Charlie Chaplin as well, right?
Don't judge a man by his merits, judge him by his mustache.
Yes.
Agreed.
But as in terms of the way that it affected society, the charisma that was added under Hitler because of his stash, simply it's added to his popularity. That little bit of unique facial hair on his face led to charisma and led to him in the position that he got to. And I mean, at this point, you've basically got to defend Nazism and show how Nazism is good for society, because Hitler's mustache equals Nazism. That's it. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. You had 30 seconds left. Ollie, I mean, how can you argue with some of that logic? Let's find out. Your 2 minutes begins now.
Someone being easy to distinguish doesn't further whatever cause they have. It just makes people identify them easily. You have it depends what people's presupposition is as to whether or not they like that person already. So people hate Donald Trump when they make fun of the way he looks, and he's quite an easy to distinguish guy. That doesn't make them like him again. It all relies on people's biases to begin with. So my point is that you've got Hitler, and then the same mustache is used by someone that counters him. They're so interrelated visually. So you've got a stark opposition right at the sort of visual forefront. And so that mustache is actually something that has not only been used to counter fascism, but has actually been used for people to identify this evil guy that may or may not have jogged past them on his morning run at some point, and they would never have known.
That all you got?
I don't know, I'm done with that.
Hey, you have 30 seconds left. Jake, your rebuttal period begins now.
Look, you can focus on the mustache as simply an identification feature, but what I'm talking about is the addition to the charisma that he puts across, and the addition to the charisma that he gets when he sees himself in the mirror. Let's not beat around the bush here. That stash is absolutely impeccable, right? That the grooming required on that speaks of a man of
Who had 4 minutes? No, who had 20 seconds? Oh, sorry, I'm interrupting. Carry on.
What?
I completely just lost my train of thought there, trying to understand what the hell Adam was talking about.
I'll give you an extra 20 seconds for that. Sorry.
Unfair.
So, yeah. It speaks of a man who cares about the way he looks, and a person who cares about the way he looks is a charismatic individual. And people perceive the charisma through that stash. That stash, I propose, was definitely an instrumental device in achieving the popularity that he achieved, and thus running the German society completely into the ground. Hitler's stash was terrible for society. That's me out.
Okie dokie. So, Jake, you had 40 minutes left. Are you guys ready to start your rebuttal period of your opening question period of 4 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Excellent. We shall begin. I actually have a question. We'll start with you, Jake. I recently watched Shrek, right?
Yes.
And the main message of that film is that we are not the sum of our appearance. Why would Hitler be any different?
I don't purport that Hitler was the sum of merely his appearance. My whole point is that his appearance, including the stash, almost, I would say, first and foremost, the stash, led to the popularity that he gained, and thus the effect he had on society.
Okay. Ollie, I've got a question for you.
Mm.
You stated that Hitler's mustache lightens the mood. Would you say that was true of Hitler, that he has any element of him lightens the mood in any conversation ever?
Hitler's mustache does not lighten the mood. Charlie Chaplin's mustache lightens the mood.
Same mustache.
It is the same mustache.
No, it's not. No, it is not. There is a big difference. One of them is connected to Hitler, and one of them is connected to Charlie Chaplin, my friend.
Well, Charlie Chaplin styled his mustache on Hitler's.
This fundamentally backs up what I'm saying, that the mustache and the person wearing the mustache are intrinsically linked, and you cannot separate the man from the stash. He's proven my point.
Does that mean that Charlie Chaplin and Hitler are intrinsically linked, even though they...
No, that's exactly
clearly...
what I'm saying. I'm saying they are not. They are linked to their stashes and not necessarily to each other.
But they have the same stash.
Yes.
So they're intrinsically linked.
No.
If I'm intrinsically linked to Christianity, and you're intrinsically linked to Christianity, does that not intrinsically link us in some way?
No, it means that we're both linked to the same thing.
Which links us?
Carriage A is not connected to carriage C, but carriage A and C are both connected to carriage B.
What?
Two things can be connected to the same object without them being connected to each other.
Oh, I see what you're saying. But they're on the same train, nonetheless.
Okay.
Jake,
right.
I've got a question for you. You said it would take a lot of time to groom yourself for Hitler, Tash, right? I've got to disagree with that statement.
No.
I actually think it's got to be the easiest mustache to groom in the history of humanity. I genuinely think he made it by mistake while shaving and must have been like, well, it's something.
Well, look here, Adam. Judging by the state of your facial hair, I wouldn't say that you know very much about grooming at all. All right?
Well then.
Ad hominems popping out, guys.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I don't think it's massively. I don't think my argument hinges on how long it takes to style a Hitler stash. So I'll just concede that one. I think. Matthew's just walked past.
The whole
Chris
argument.
No, I'm not going to concede the argument. I concede that perhaps the Hitler stash is not the most intricate of facial hair you could possibly have to style.
You're wrong.
All right.
You know, I think you are wrong, Jake. Does anybody have any other questions before Because we have 20 seconds left.
Nah, I'm done. Like,
I'm done.
All right, closing statements. Ollie, you're arguing for, so you have the first 20
Okay.
seconds. Time starts now.
So Jake seemed to loosely talk about how the mustache gained popularity for Hitler. I want to see some sort of tangible historical evidence for such a thing. I don't think that's recorded anywhere that people loved Hitler purely for his mustache.
Time's up.
Mm.
Jake, you ready for your 20 seconds?
yeah, sure, go.
Time starts now.
Well, since Ollie decided to use his closing statement as an extra argument, I will also provide an argument. If you take a look at the memes of Donald Trump, there's some historical evidence that the physical appearance of someone can massively boost his popularity. There you go. BAM!
Okay.
No?
Time is up. Hey, time is up.
That's it, mate.
Oh man, me and you are gonna tussle.
I never heard that word before, tussle. Well, I'll tell you what.
How do you know what it means then?
Purely, right? I'm gonna give this one to Ollie
Oh.
purely for the attack on my facial hair and no reason whatsoever about
Oh
anything else.
no! I made a mistake. I'll
No,
take
I'm
it
just
back.
being cheeky. I'm just being cheeky. Okie dokie. Right. Jake, I would like a debate with you, if that's okay, because I've not actually debated you yet.
I'm sure. Didn't you?
No, I've debated Ollie.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Pretty sure I have. Anyway, Ollie, have I ever debated Jake?
No, I don't think so. I think I debated
Yeah.
Jake, and then I debated Adam, and then
That was it. We only did 2 last week.
yeah, something
Yeah.
like that.
So
All right. Well, here I've pulled 3 out. Okay. Here are our options. The first one I pulled out was that. So you'd be arguing in favor of we are all just pawns in Ollie's game. Is the first one. The second one is the Queen should do a violent takeover of the UK. And the third one is instead of everybody laughing, one person should just say the word humorous, and then everybody else in the group should say agreed.
Say that again.
Instead of everybody laughing, one person should say the word humorous, and everybody else should say the word agreed.
I love that.
That's weird.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine like a comedy festival, like with no laughter at all? Comics would just be absolutely ruined by that.
So what do you want to see? Ollie, you're the moderator. What do you want to see? A debate
Read them
about?
again.
So, number 1, we are all just pawns in Ollie's game that he's playing. Number 2, the Queen should do a violent takeover of the UK. Number 3, instead of everybody laughing, one person should say the word humorous and the others should say the word agreed.
The megalomaniac in me wants to hear about how you're all pawns in my game.
I don't mind. I'll do. I mean, the first one and the
I don't
third one
mind.
is between for me. I'm not sure I want to actually. I'm worried about having to fight for Liz.
All right,
Taking the
I'll
streets on
happily
a
do
horse.
I'll happily do the first one. I'll happily argue in favor of the first one. I mean, like in the coin flip. I mean, so if somebody wants to flip a coin, if they have one, and then heads, I'll argue in favor.
I don't have a coin.
I've got
one.
Not Matthew. Ollie.
I'm just gonna decide what side of this label is heads, and then throw it.
Right. Okay.
Right, this side is heads. So okay, it's heads.
Oh, so that's me arguing that we are all pawns in Ollie's game.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Oh, crumbs.
I've got.
Does
the
somebody
easier
wanna-
job, I think.
Oh, dang it.
Just please don't have one of your points be, look at this guy, he's too stupid to do something.
I was just thinking that, like, there is zero chance that Ollie is intellectually strong enough to do something like that.
Okay, I'm ready. Somebody wants to time me.
I haven't got a timer. Can you do a timer, Ollie?
Oh. Let me have a look. A timer.
Is that confirmation that you have a timer?
Porn. Right. How do I use this?
You hit go. And it starts counting.
This is so weird. Yeah, I've got it to work. I've got it to work, people.
Oh god.
All right. Let's do it. Right. 3,
Okey-dokey.
2, 1, go.
So, I think that when I say we all, I want to frame that argument. I do mean everybody in the universe. No, I don't. I mean specifically us lot. Okay, we all, us lot. Okay, and here's why we're all pawns in Ollie's game. So the first question would be, think about it, Jake. How do we all know each other? Okay, there is one uniting factor here. Okay, and it's definitely through Ollie. The next point I want to make is that I don't know if you remember, Jake. Me and you were at a wedding last week. And I can't remember if you remembered why we were there. Oh, that's right. It was because of Ollie. Another thing, we were both just happened to be in Peterborough at the same time last week and a month earlier. And there must have been one reason for that, Ollie. And when you start to unravel this tapestry, it becomes clear to anybody that Ollie has been playing us as pawns in this sick game for a long time. One way you could do this by analysing the goal. Right, so you need to analyze what is Ollie's goal and is he closer to achieving the goal? Okay, and if he is, then that proves that we are pawns in his game. Now, here's the one thing: if Ollie's goal was to marry Simone, okay, then you must admit that we have been active pawns in that game, aiding and abetting him, even going as far as to so unwittingly helping him during the wedding service. Okay, this must be a piece of evidence that we are in some way involved in Ollie's game. Another point would be: think about the reason why you do anything, in fact. Why do you wake up in the morning and then you remembered, well, it's to please Ollie in some way.
Right.
And then you've got to think, why did we do this podcast today? Who is leading this podcast? Ollie. Again, the same thing over and over and over again. And it's clear, I think, anyway, that when you analyze your own life, you'll see all in the same way that all the roads lead to Rome, all the roads will lead to Ollie in your own life, in your own existence. How do you know Richard, for example? It's through Ollie. How do you know what the inside of Ollie's house looks like? Again, it's through Ollie. How do you know Simone? Again, through Ollie. All these things, it gets to a point where it's not just a coincidence, Jake. There must be something, some power, and I think it's more logical to reason that it is a plan of Ollie's than anything else. Specifically, if Ollie had a goal and he achieved that goal, there must be in some way some overarching theme or plan.
Just a sec. Was it 2 minutes for the opening statements?
Yeah.
All right. You now get that. That's your opening statement done, I'm afraid. And Jake,
Jake.
because of
Good.
fairness,
So I get to go again.
No,
okay.
No, that's yours done. And because of fairness, Jake, you will have 2 minutes, 37 seconds, and 44 milliseconds.
Right.
Okay.
2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Before
I
we start,
totally forgot.
Before we start the timer, can I just say that was actually a really convincing, like, circumstantial case. You got me worried about Ollie now.
They're on to me.
Yeah. All right.
Right. 3, 2, 1, go.
I think the first thing I'm gonna have to bring up in defense of, well, Ollie's character, it will be his character itself. I think the type of manipulation that you're describing just isn't befitting a Christian, you know, or of Ollie himself. I mean, Look at the guy. He could never pull off something like no. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think you've got to kind of imagine whether this type of thing is actually going to be a viable explanation for these events. I understand that you're trying to kind of evoke. What is it? Invoke? Yeah, invoke Occam's razor to try and kind of shoehorn in the explanation that that Oliver's completely in control. But I don't think he has the character for it. I really think that he's a more like, I'm having a really hard time actually describing why it is that you're not this person, Ollie. Yeah. I think I have to concede. Truly, I've got no idea how to argue against this. I've been thwarted. This is an official concession. I literally cannot do this. There's nothing coming to my mind. I don't know how to argue against it. Ollie, I cannot be friends with you anymore, bro.
We've revealed the plan.
Yeah. I'm sorry, guys.
The only reason you say that is because I no longer want to be friends with you, Paul.
Can I have a rebuttal period?
Mate, what is there to rebut? I've
said
just
once,
conceded. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
You can rebut it if you like. You've got as much time as you like.
I mean, it's starting to look, Ollie, very much like we are pawns in your game.
Yeah.
My only rebuttal would be, you said, is Ollie's character compatible with this sort of plan, right?
Yeah. Mm.
I would argue, absolutely, this sort of character. This is a guy who recommended, what's the name of that dessert shop, Ollie? Casper's. My gosh, that place was bad, and he did that knowingly. This is somebody
You didn't
with
enjoy it?
No, this guy
Why?
has devious intention. Okay, no, I'm kidding. But one thing I would say is that Ollie is a fallen being. Okay,
Right.
that he's not going to have perfect intentions all the time. And secondly, you're assuming that he's controlling us for an insidious purpose. What if his purpose, the reason why he's doing it, was for the greater good? Then it would be befitting of his character. If he had a good character. See what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
See what I'm throwing down?
I would rebut, but I've already conceded. I don't think it's fair. You win that one, like.
Ollie, we're all just pawns in your game.
That's alright, I know.
So now in true mastermind fashion, do you want to do the outro for this episode, like?
Do you know what I thought was really funny, right?
Go on.
Was that when Jake was sort of like, you were gonna say, well, Ollie's not intelligent enough to do that, but like didn't say it because it might be insulting. As though I'm gonna be insulted because someone said I'm not intelligent enough to actually control other people's lives without them knowing it.
Right, yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm not, and I have no issue with admitting that.
Don't be insulted, mate, but you do not have an IQ of 190.
Yeah, don't be insulted, but you are not a living genius.
Alright. Take us out.
Hey.
You're the host.
Oh,
You're the host.
okay. So condolences to Iceland. Condolences to Jake. Congratulations to Ollie yet again.
It's if by design.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you anyone who actually watched for watching yet again. The most unrepresentatively watched show on the internet. Yeah, that concludes the episode. Laters.
Bye.
See you next week.